Last week, I spoke to the instructional leaders and gave them just a quick overview of what we plan to do, but just to give you some more details today and to walk through some suggestions of what I think would be good for you to look at with this. Um, the screen behind me, I always like this one because people say, oh, it looks so good, the ocean, under the water. I said, well, the way we feel right now, we're submerged. We barely have our heads above water. So in a lot of ways, the background applies, and I know folks in the department and the folks in the district feel the same way. So I'm going to cut my camera off, but go behind the screen and walk you through this presentation. The main thing I want to get across today is, as you're looking at your academic recovery plans, where and when you have questions, please ask us. We will help you. We will offer you advice. At the end of the day, as these plans are revised, we'll give you feedback, but we want to help you determine what is best for your students, and you know that. So as we start, if you've ever been around me long, you know that I love children's literature. And I think there's always a way that we can find life's lessons in children's literature. And so this has become one of my favorite books recently, and the folks in adult ed actually introduced this to me. But what do you do with a chance? And so much of the things that we do in our world, we feel like we're taking a chance. Sometimes we shy away from that, but there's so many times we want those students to take a chance, our teachers to take a chance, just to step out and to do that. So I want to share this book with you. It was written by Kobe Imada, and is just a great book. One day I got a chance. It just seemed to show up. It acted like it knew me, as if it wanted something. I didn't know why it was here. What do you do with a chance? I wondered. It fluttered around me. It brushed up against me. It circled me as if it wanted me to grab it. I started to reach for it, but I was unsure and pulled back. And so it flew away. I thought about it a lot. I wished I had taken my chance. I realized I had wanted it, but I still didn't know if I had the courage. When another chance came around, I wasn't so sure, but I decided to try. I went to reach for it, but I missed and fell. I was embarrassed. I felt foolish. It seemed like everyone was looking at me. I decided I never wanted to feel this way again. So after that, whenever a chance came along, I ignored it. And the more I ignored them, the less they came around. Until one day I noticed that I hadn't seen a chance in quite a while. It was as if they all disappeared. And I started to worry. What if I don't get another chance? I know I acted like I didn't care, but the truth was I did. I still wanted to take a chance, but I was afraid, and I wasn't sure if I would ever be brave enough. Then I thought, maybe I don't have to be brave all the time. Maybe I just need to be brave for a little while at the right time. I realized it was up to me. I promised myself that if I ever got the chance, I wasn't going to hold back. If I got another chance, I was going to be ready. Then, one seemingly ordinary day, I saw something shining far off in the distance. Is it possible, I hope? Could this be my chance? I had to find out. I ran as hard and as fast as I could toward it. I don't know how to explain it, but the second I let go of my fears, I was full of excitement. It wasn't that I was no longer afraid, but now my excitement was bigger than my fear. As I got closer, I could see that this was a really huge chance. But this time I was ready. And as it came by, I reached out and I grabbed it and I held on with all my might. It felt so good to soar, to fly, to be free. I now see that when I hold back, I miss out. And I don't want to miss out. That's just so much I want to see. There's just so much I want to see and do and discover. So, what do you do with a chance? You take it because it just might be the start of something incredible. What do chances become? New friendships, exciting opportunities, daring discoveries. Chances are invitations to grand adventures, tickets to unforgettable experiences, and doors to whole new worlds. Chances help you see who you are, what you want, and where you want to go. So, what will you do with your chance? Now, that's up to you. So, there are some chances we need to take in the work that we're in. Um, we often shy away from that. But I think you all can see in the work that you're in, there's so many times that we've had to take a chance. Sometimes we fail at it, but those that we really believe in, we grab a hold to it, we know that we've got something good. So as we move forward in looking at what we need to do to revise our academic recovery plan, some of that is some chances we need to take. We need to be bold in some of our decisions. We need to be bold and rigorous with the expectations that we have of our students and of our teachers. We need to take the chance to make sure that we are embracing every opportunity to improve Tier 1, Core 1 instruction, and also that we make sure that those students who are behind, that we provide the targeted interventions that are just right for them to move our students forward. If you've ever heard me talk, I often say that folks in our world say in education there's no silver bullet, but I really do think that we do have one. That magic bullet, that silver bullet for us is a strong, effective teacher, and who is paired with a strong instructional leader in that school, and those two together, you know, they trump so many problems with poverty, language barriers, COVID. There's so many things they can accomplish with a strong, effective teacher and a good, strong school leader. But if you're like me, there's so much data that we have, and we get into information overload. And how do we look at this data? How do we decipher through it? How do we look at it and determine what is it that we need to act on? And that's a key thing, and that's a key place where we need to start. You've been provided, all of our districts have been provided with a way to organize that data, a way to filter through the data through our work with education analytics and the Rally tool that we have. That is a phenomenal tool that, when used well, it can really advise you on the places where you need improvement. And as we look, this is the Rally data statewide that we received last year. And while we're waiting on the fall data, that we know that over time, we've seen the recovery. We have seen that during the fall, even back in the fall of 21, there was some evidence of recovery. There have been some setbacks along the way, but we know even with the learning lag, we are experiencing a recovery. And you see the difference in ELA on the left and math on the right. We knew the forecast was that we were going to take bigger dips in math than we did ELA. And I've been asked about our legislators about this and why math, and it's nationwide. But we have to remember our students and where they were um, last year in the spring of last year when they had completed their interim assessments, but they also had taken their summative assessments. And you give this, I give this example often. You have a fourth grade student last year that was, in the 21-22 school year, he was in fourth grade. Well, the year prior, in that particular year, 21-22, we all know that the rough start we had with all the quarantines that took place at the beginning of the year and then again in January. We really had some tough moments trying to even get our work in. We had a tough time getting our interim assessments completed on time. So the quarantines last year really impacted our overall performance and our work. Take that student who the year before was in third grade in the 2021 school year. If you remember that year, that was the year that so many different instructional models our students were on. Were they on hybrid? Were they on face-to-face? Were they all virtual? That had a huge impact on our students. And I really think one of the greatest impacts that we had that we didn't really know at the time was those students who were hybrid. Because while a teacher was working 5 days a week, she had two different groups of students often, those that were at home, those who were at school, and those who weren't directly under that direct instruction with that teacher during the year, I do think suffered a good bit. And then you take the year before when these fourth graders had been in second grade, and that was the year that COVID hit in March and things came to a screeching halt. And so you think about math in the second grade. He was in second grade that year. He moved in third grade. In those 2 years, there were some critical skills in math that were probably lost simply because of the time out of school. Not that he couldn't get the skills like place value, but the absence of that direct instruction and that good sound instruction and that time out of school, the time that we lost, had that impact. And so I think that's why we saw the rise and fall, and now the recovery that we're seeing in our scores. So I think, considering our circumstances of the pandemic, we are on the road to recovery. We are recovering, and I think that's so important. I often think about, you compare this to a health pandemic or a health risk that somebody goes through. It takes time to get over that, and it takes good care to get through that, and the right attention to recover. And so the same thing happens in education. We saw some of the greatest influxes in our students with those who were economically disadvantaged. And they did not have all of the resources available to them during the pandemic. And so while we see that there were recovery efforts there among those students, we do see that there were gaps as well, and there was some lag. But there also have been able to maintain some of that growth too. This compares the students on this slide with those who were the economically disadvantaged as compared to those who were considered non-economically disadvantaged students. And you see the gaps were wider in ELA in this example than they were in math. And then over time, our English language learners, and this one was a little bit surprising to me because I thought the language barriers would have been the bigger dip for them. but we see that it was in math that they had some of the biggest, the widest gaps there for our English language learners. And so I show you these slides just to show you the state evidence. And this is all of our assessment data, our interim assessment data, the assessments that we gave, merged into all those data points are merged into this. And so this is an overall look at statewide. And so I encourage you, when you get these slides, just to compare your district to the state trends. This references our students, or the change over time with our students with disabilities, and you see the fluctuations there as compared to the students without disabilities, and they remain pretty constant with the typical flow of our students. So again, some gaps there, and we did expect that. So if you look over time, and you bundle all this together, the different percentiles, we see those students who were behind prior to the pandemic. I think it's safest to say those are the students who are still behind. Those are the students with the largest gaps. Some of that is bundled together. You can see that in math. They sort of bundled together and intended during the pandemic to trend a little bit downward. You saw in ELA, those who were in the top percentiles were beginning to recover a little bit sooner. So I say all this to show you this as we look at our academic plans, to consider those tiers of students who do need assistance, those students who need the strongest interventions, and those are going to be those students who were behind prior to the pandemic. That gap is still pretty wide with where they are now. And so our original academic recovery plans were submitted in May of 2021. We were coming out of that first year of after coming back to school. There were different instructional platforms. And so we asked districts that as we moved into the 21-22 school year, what is your plan to recover? Now, because we were expecting the 21-22 school year, we were hoping that we were going to get back to normal, or there would be some normalcy. We didn't anticipate all the quarantines that we had, and that did impact us somewhat. So those plans were submitted to the department in May of 21. We gave every district feedback on those. We had a third party outside of the agency, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them later, who helped us read those plans and provide feedback, because we knew that feedback would be extremely important. But because last year was more disrupted than we thought, and districts were trying to get their interim assessments completed in spite of the quarantines, you were trying to get interventions in place. You had your ESSER plans had been approved, and the money that you were purchasing, a lot of you were purchasing interventions or intervention services at that time. And so we knew we needed you to give you some time to look at that data to determine what was working, what wasn't working, and what changes needed to be made. So I think we're at the point we really need to look back at these plans and determine what changes, if any, that we need to make. And I say if any because some of you have a good handle on where you are and know that you have a good plan, and it may be that it doesn't need a lot of changes. Maybe it's that you double down on where you are. But the first thing I would tell you to do, even before you look at the academic recovery plan that was submitted to the state in May of 21, that you go to your American Rescue Plan, which we call ESSER 3. And I know we get all these plans confused, but that was what you submitted to the department, and with Tanya Mallet Smith and Jennifer Wheeler and those in that department who approved your plan for the spending. In that plan to our to the federal government, when our ESSER plan for the state was approved, it was approved with a caveat that districts had included their academic recovery plan, their district academic recovery plan that was submitted in May 21 in consideration for your ESSER, what I'll call your ESSER 3 plan, and how that funding came to you, the funds came to you. That probably is the first place you need to look. Did you make revisions in that plan, and maybe not make them in your academic recovery plan? So if you did, the two plans need to really align. And so let me walk you through some ways that you can do that, and just to really begin with the end in mind. So we're going to ask that you review, revise, update that academic recovery plan that was submitted in May of 21. And we're going to send the form for that, for the changes that you need to make to you. That will be sent to you on October 4th in our district, our department mail out, our email distribution on October 4th. That information will come to you with that form, as well as the plan that you submitted, so that you have what we have and we'll know what you're revising. And so to do this and to make those changes, we ask you to look at your plan. And as you look at it, go back now and look at your formative data that you may have in your district, those school teacher assessments and what those are telling you. But you all have data, interim data, the interim benchmark data from your MAP, NWA MAP assessments, your Renaissance STAR assessments, your Curriculum Associates iReady assessments, and now your Instructure Case Benchmark assessments. You have current and historical data available to you in the Rally tool that you can look at the trends of that data and to see how you're trending. You also have your summative assessment data, which is SC Ready, SC Pass, your end of course assessment. So you've got your summative data that you can look at as well and see what those trends are. In revising your plans, all of you probably at this point have heard something about the changes to the accountability model, and the growth goal, the growth component of our accountability model. And that is changing. There have been a number of presentations that districts could take advantage of, but districts will be receiving actual growth target goals for each student, grades 4 through 8, because those are based on those summative assessments. And those are the areas with SC Ready that we can show the growth. So a student who took SC Ready last year in 3rd grade is in 4th grade now. That data will be for him as far as to how many target points he needs to grow. What is his growth goal based in points? And so that will be available to all districts. And those numbers will be available to you mid-October. So if I go back to this slide, so much data, information overload. And how do you look at all of that data? And a place to begin really is with those interim assessments and the trends that you're making in your district. We really want you to look at what your current interventions are and determine the effectiveness of those. And don't be I was always guilty of, I didn't see immediate results and I jumped to something else. Have the interventions that you have in place, have you given them enough time? They may not have yielded all the results that you're hoping for, and not recovering as quick as you did, but do you see trends of improvement? And so before you jump from one thing to another, are you seeing any of those trends those are effective? So weigh out, the interruptions that you had last year, a year before, when you put those interventions in place. Is it that you need more time with that intervention? Is there something that you've put in place this year, last year, that you need more time for it to take hold? And I'll give an example. Some of our well, all of our Palmetto Literacy Project schools are involved in the Science of Reading training with letters. That training, you are in the midst of that. Is it that you need more time for that to take hold, to see that recovery, because you were in the midst of training teachers and the effectiveness of that? So really look hard at those interventions that you have in place, and especially the ones that you have put some of your ESSER money in, and just to making sure that those are effective and that you're getting the bang for your buck out of that. But I caution you not to really jump to something else if you really need more time with this to go deeper with it. And then looking at those tiers of remediation, and those were included in our original academic recovery plan. The Rally tool provides you specific data around these. We do know those students who are in that tier, and you can look at your Rally tool. And I know Dan's online here, and that he will be speaking to you tomorrow, and probably could give you a little bit more information about how to use that Rally tool. But I'm telling you, it's a diamond in the rough when it helps you filter and determine where your students are and what level of remediation they need. Those who need significant remediation were probably those who were behind prior to the pandemic. It's going to take time. It's going to take several years for them to start making the progress that you want them to make. Look also, when you get your target goals, from the data, that those growth target goals, these students will have those goals. See how aggressively those goals may be for those students, and are the interventions in place going to move you toward that target? I look at those who need moderate remediation, and those are probably some that were impacted by the pandemic the most. They may have been had it not been for the pandemic, they may have been more on grade level than they are now, and that loss of instructional time just really had that greatest impact on them. And is that something where they need more time and more intensive interventions just to get them back on target? And then there are those students who just need the mild remediation, and what you're doing for those, and not that there are quick fixes to those, but those are students with the just right interventions they can get back on target. That Rally tool can help you look at those tiers for each of those students, and how do you then what do you have in place? What are your goals for those interventions? We are going to ask that the academic recovery plans, we're going to give you a long runway. You need time. You need to look at your data. You need to look at the interim data that you will have this fall. You really need to pay attention to those target growth goals that each student will have, and how you decipher those, and how you have conversations with teachers so that that's not all that overwhelming to them. I would tell you to really rely and focus on those interim assessments that you have, and what trends do you see with that. I would really knock on the door of those interim assessment providers, asking them for help, the tools that they have in place, and helping you interpret that data, and then how you can move those students. Those providers have been selected for a reason. They match aligned to our standards and aligned to our assessments. Their assessments have the ability to show growth. So lean on them to help you with interpreting that data. So we're going to ask that you put all that together, and it's going to give you a little bit longer runway to determine what you really need to do. Do you need to go out there and have those conversations with your schools, with those providers, and making sure that your plan is the just right plan, and that the due date for this is December 15th. You know, I often say all God's children got a plan for something. And when it comes to the academic recovery plan, and you see the focus here and what we're going to talk about in a few minutes, to me, this is some of the most important work that we can do. And we need to give you the time to put your plan together. And so to me, this is more than a strategic plan. This is an action plan. This is something that you're going to act on, and to really move students forward. So the academic recovery plans, originally, when we looked at this, we looked at 3 different tiers: the mild, the moderate, the significant remediation. I shared that with you. We asked districts to, as they wrote their plan, what strategies will you have in place for each of these groups? And now you've probably put some ESSER funding with that. And that's a good place to look and see, is that working for you? And how do you evaluate it? You know, that takes time, but how now do you drill down and determine what you need to do to make those changes? Don't use just one data point. Use the different data points that you have to make the changes that you need. Or it may be that you don't need to make a change. Maybe as you evaluate it, you've determined that for whatever reasons that your data shows you, you need to stick with the plan that you have. Again, this is information about the Rally tool. I encourage you to either contact me or Dan Relier. We'll get you in touch if you aren't using the Rally tool to your full extent. But this is as I said, a diamond in the rough that can help you look at all of the current and past historical data. It is converted to a South Carolina Ready scale, so it can measure growth and can align to our scores, and so that you can have some you can really have some assurance that when you're looking at that Rally tool and that your data, that it is trending and it is a good predictor in the direction that you're going, headed toward your summative assessment. We built the tool that we use, the template that we use for the academic recovery plan, around this tool, this Rally tool, just so that your analysis of that data would be a little bit easier for you to fold into. So here are some suggestions and recommendations. You've got your plan. We'll send it to you. You look over it. You're looking at your data, and sometimes when it comes to goals, less is more. And while the tool allowed you, I think, to have as many as 15 goals, that's way too many. You're encouraged to focus on targeted goals. And we ask you to write these in SMART goals. And you know how to do that. And that, that there is the evidence, there's the time element in there, and that it's actionable, and that you submit as you revise between 3 and 5 goals. And I would tell you, when you do this, if you can do 3 rather than 5, then I think you're on target. I don't know that we'd be opposed if you could do 2, as opposed to 5. We encourage you to consolidate where you can, your ELA goals. Make sure that if you have, and I know you do have a reading plan, and you have literacy goals in there, make those the same goals. Don't create more work. Make sure those goals are common goals to each other, and that you're working in the right direction on that. And so looking at your goals in ELA and math, don't forget those students who are leaving middle school, going to high school, your high school students who you want to make sure are meeting their own time graduation goals. And making sure that all these goals that you have are actionable. Focusing on ELA and math, where we need to do that. And you see the evidence that where we are and where we're trending, but don't forget those students and matching that on time graduation goal for your students, because those students who are behind in the pandemic in middle school, as they get to high school, they're going to need some structures in place just to make sure that they're meeting their graduation requirements to graduate on time. So if you're revising or consolidating your previous goals, or maybe you're creating new ones, we're going to ask you for the strategies and resources that you're going to use to meet those goals. And so just making sure your goals are set, you have strategies in place to meet those goals, and you have the appropriate resources in place as well. If you elect to continue using the goals that you had from the last school year, just give us the evidence in your academic recovery plan as to why you're maintaining that goal. And as I said earlier, it may be you're in the midst of some intensive professional training with your teachers, or an intervention that you have in place, and that you need more time to reach that goal. It's just really too soon for you to make any changes. Some other recommendations that we hope you consider when you look at your plans. There are some school districts may have had changes in their school improvement designations, CSI schools, TSI. Did those designations change? And if they did, how does that impact the strategies that you've had? Do you have new schools that came on and that you need to make some new goals in the district around those? There's some of our districts that consolidated, and merging districts together and merging plans together. You were different districts, separate districts, and now you've merged into one. So what does that one plan now look like for your district? Look at your Rally tool data, and look at the interim data that you have available. And so that should be easy for you to find and locate. But if you have any problems with that, of course, reach out to me or anybody at the department. We'll be glad to help you. Sometimes you need some input from some stakeholders. Maybe it's some folks, some community groups that you're working with, or parent groups that you're working with, just to get some input. Are you headed in the right direction? Is the vision and goals that you have, are they headed in the right direction of what everyone thinks the school district needs? And then again, I won't go into a lot about the effectiveness of the strategies, but how effective are they? And are you seeing growth? Are you seeing improvement? Is it more time that you need, or is it something that you thought would work and didn't, and you really need to change at this point? You have the freedom and license to keep going with what you feel like is making progress, but also to abandon something where you don't think is getting you the progress that you need. Consider, as I said earlier, the implementation of professional learning. You may have a district focus, and what is happening with that, And as we know, professional learning is best when it is implemented well with the curriculum that you have in place. And so it may be specific things that you're focused on with your curriculum and the professional training that you're going on with that, and you just need more time. New personnel, new leadership may have a new focus. You may have a new superintendent who says, here's the direction we're going in. And so you might need to look at how you need to, that would impact your change. So as you analyze your data, the Rally tool does provide that common set of data for us. And as we as a state can look, while this data is yours and we don't make comparisons, we can see the statewide trends in that. And again, that Rally tool data will help you break down those tiered structures for your students, mild, moderate, or significant. The goal here is, in that bottom bullet, that all students make that annual or that yearly growth. And those students who are behind grade level, they've got to make that yearly growth, and that you also have to make that catch up or that intervention growth, as I call it, if they're going to get to grade level. I am a firm believer that that good, solid core one, tier one instruction is a critical place for us to make that annual growth for all students. And as you look at your plans, what can you do to make sure that that core one, tier one instruction is the strongest and the most effective that it can be? And if it's not, where it needs improvement, where it needs changes, what are the strategies that you can use to put that in place? And for those students who need more than that yearly growth, and you're going to see that for those when you get those target goals, what strategies do they specifically need that's more personalized, that's targeted, and I just say targeted to meet the needs for them to grow. And those students, one strategy for all students is more than likely not going to meet the mark. We need to be targeted in those strategies, and when done well, when implemented well, we can make the progress. So again, your goals and strategies, those goals are to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. You know how to do that. How do the strategies that you have, how do they impact each of your tiers, so that you make sure that every student is getting, what they need in your plan. And then earlier we asked everybody to really think about revising their plan or evaluating their plan. And some have really put this on hold just to get through last year. And so now looking at your plan, really, how are you going to evaluate it? And it's going to be, I think, in those trends that you're seeing the data make, or the trends that the data are making for your district. Make sure this is a fluid document. And so if you need to make changes, it's very easy for you to do. I'll show you this information. You will get this when you get the slides. So maybe you want some assistance. There are a lot of districts who have the infrastructure to look at their data, to analyze it, they have good resources, they have good people in places where they can have the infrastructure in-house to really drill down and dig into their data. But there are a lot of districts where a lot of you wear many different hats, and this is just be one part of your job. Education Elements and their information is attached here, and you can get that and look at it. They actually were the group that read our academic recovery plans back in May, and were a third party to offer us advice and suggestions. So they know your plans. They've read those. Maybe you would like someone to come in that's not judgmental, non-judgmental, non-threatening, that can help you look at your data and determine what direction you need to go. We'll be glad to help you at the department, but sometimes you're hesitant to ask us because you think we're going to judge you on that. We want to provide you a free, safe zone to look at your data. So that is outside of the department. We have contracted with them and told them that we know districts need that help in all the information they have, all the data that they have. And how do you synthesize that? How do you analyze that? How do you put that into an actionable plan? They're good thought partners. They will walk you through. They're not going to tell you it has to be done one way. They will grow with you in helping you analyze that data, but help build capacity in your district to look at data. This is about building capacity with your district, your school leaders, how to look at that data and how to determine what the next steps are. And so if you see here, there's a sign up date and they will come out and more or less work with coaching you through that, provide you technical assistance, just be good thought partners. So I encourage you to reach out to them, and you've got plenty of time to work with them to revise and update your plan or affirm that you're on the right track. So just something for you to consider. If you ever have a chance to get a copy of this book, I am an absolute disciple of this book. It really does look at what our goals of our academic recovery plans. It's a little dated. It was written back, I think, 2008 about a school district in Oregon who made great growth at that time using their interim assessment data, the goals that they set, but it was targeted annual interventions and growth for their students, targeted annual growth. They called it TAG. And so they were very specific in what they did to make sure that each student were meeting their targets and that there was annual growth and there was growth for those who are behind. So it is a great book, a lot of common sense. It applied well back in early 2000s, but it still applies today. So if you get a copy of that, I encourage you. That's a great district or school book study. Encourage you to look at that. So as we move forward, have all the data. I just want to show you some data trends for the state and how you compare with us. And so when you're having conversations with school board members, people in the community, you can talk about how your district compares to the state. So these are all overall state results. While we say there is recovery or growth in ELA and math, some are saying, well, what is growth? Well, what I would say is we're reflective of our pre-pandemic scores in ELA. We're back to where we were in some of those scores in right before the pandemic, and ELA is on, as we look at our SC Ready scores. We have shown some growth or some movement forward in math, but it's not really back at that pre-pandemic level. And giving you an example in elementary school of why that may be, and those skills that students may have missed and maybe missed those targeted interventions to help get them back on target. So there is recovery. There is growth. And so is there more work to do? Absolutely. Are we where we want to be? No, we've got more work to do. But I also think we have to look at our teachers who have worked very hard, and you know who they are, to applaud them for getting us to where they are, where we are. And it is so, they have had a very difficult job in moving their students forward with all the changes and the different scenarios going on. I've often compared it to changing the tire on, they're changing a tire on a car, but the car's still moving. And it was a very difficult job. So we see that recovery. But I have to say, there's more work that we've got to do. And as we focus on our plans and revising our plans, we know that that's where we're headed with that. And so how do we do that? I'm not going to walk through all of these slides with you, but I put these here so that you could take these, feed in your goal, your district goals and comparisons, so that you could look at those. The numbers and does not meet expectations have always been alarming to us, because those students are really probably more than a grade level, 2 grade levels behind where we need them to be. There were fewer in 22 than there were in 21. We're good with that, but there's still a high percentage there. You're looking at students who are probably at the 25th percentile or that bottom quartile of students. So they're below grade level. You move over into approaching expectations, just something to keep in mind. There are students there who are still below grade level. They haven't reached that grade level until they get to the higher end of approaching. Our goal is to get everybody to at least meet expectations. And so it's good to see, if you look at these trends, that there were fewer and does not meet and approaching. And then as we started moving into meets and exceeds expectations, we did see some growth. So you see that we're moving in the right direction. We just got to make sure that as we move, we're doing the right things, and that's why that plan that you have is so important. So that's grades 3 through 5 in ELA. Here are your grades, grades 6 through 8. I wonder sometimes, I look at those numbers in 6th grade ELA, and those who are meeting and exceeding expectations, a little over 45% of our students were there. So it might be worth us looking at what's going on in 6th grade ELA to determine what progress we're making there. There may be some lessons learned that we can duplicate, other places. So that's 6th grade ELA. Looking at math, and as we said, those trends weren't as we didn't grow as much here. We didn't recover as much as we did with ELA. But look at 3rd grade math. I go back to that in 2022, 51% meeting exceeding expectations. So, is it that we looked at those skills, those priority skills that we needed in math in those grades and really focused in on those? It could be. So moving in the right direction again, but still more growth is needed. 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade math trending a little bit the same way. So look at these, put your scores beside those, and see how you measure with the state. SE Pass, I can't forget Pass. We talk so much about ELA and math. I tell you this, I show you this because you are have new science standards. If you haven't started focusing on those are some pretty tough standards. And so when that new assessment gets in place, we expect a dip, but with new standards, and a new type of standard, and it's not just the way the standards are written, the content in grades 4 and 6, I think is pretty aggressive and pretty rigorous. So you may want to start looking at those. Just as to keep this in front of you, making sure your 4th grade teachers, your 6th grade teachers have a good handle on those new science standards. Dr. Christina Melton's office can provide you some great professional training around those new standards, and if you reach out to her, she'll be glad to help you. Of course, the end of course exams, you see the data here. In Algebra 1, Biology 1, your English, your U.S. history always get questioned about the U.S. history end of course and the difficulty there. And I just have to remind the reporters this year that ask, the new U.S. history standards and the assessment were introduced during the pandemic. And anytime you implement something new, you can expect that implementation dip. But during the pandemic, that did increase. So while we dropped a little bit more, it could have been a lot worse. Algebra, English, those things are those gateway courses. They've had a career, a school career of ELA in math. They get to biology, US history. That's a lot of new content that they've never had. And when I say new content, I say a lot of new content for them to decipher and get through. So just compare your scores to those. Here are our interim assessment data, providers that have been approved. You all have one of these that you lean on them, ask them for help. You have selected them for whatever reasons. We have approved them for the state. They have tools then that can help you look at your data, but also provide you the next steps of what you may need to do. So I've told the assessment providers that you are going to lean on them and ask them for help. And so do that as you need to do that. Just to remind you that in all of this, don't forget the proviso, the legislation that says grades 1 through 8, all students grades 1 through 8 are assessed on that interim assessment data, fall, winter, and spring. And I'm sure Dan will talk to you tomorrow about the accuracy of reporting that data. But if 10% of your funding could be held if the percentage of students is not met for that. And there's some information here that will provide you for those students who have an IEP and that don't have the cognitive ability to take this assessment, that there's something in place to report their progress. I am just going to walk you through the next slides. When you get these, I'm not going to walk you through all the questions, but I provided you some information, some guiding questions that you can look at to take your next steps in revising your plan. So these are just some good questions to ask yourself. I'm going to take you back to this book, and we use this at the department to develop the academic recovery plans and the plans behind that. But we've also provided, we took that book and we provided a roadmap for you to use that mirrors that book and developing your plan. These questions would come from that roadmap, okay? And these are just some examples. And so looking at the tool that you use, how do your teachers use that, and how do you triangulate that information? What is the data telling you? Just looking at literacy, what is it showing you? For example, what is your data saying about the 5 components of reading if you're looking at an ELA goal? Do your interventions that you have in place, do they target the gaps that your data is indicating? Then how do you narrow that focus? What resources are available to you? You can't do everything. There's only so much room on the plate. But how do you narrow the focus and focus on the things that are most meaningful? Good Core 1, Tier 1 instruction. I go back to a hero of mine, Bob Marzano, and he says these are the things that an effective teacher does. So when you look at your classroom Tier 1 instruction, do you see evidence of this? And a place you can go look and determine that is that South Carolina 4.0 teaching rubric. What is your data telling you from that? Littleton Monsager has some great data from your districts and from the state around some of these indicators. So making sure that good core instruction has these components to it. Those targeted interventions, intensify. Do you need more time for those interventions? Do the students need the more time who are behind? Sometimes it's just they need time and practice rather than rolling on. And so the time that they have, what is the focus of that intervention? Does it meet their need? And then is it really the type of intervention that they need? Has it been successful? Is it not? If it's not successful, maybe you need to try something different. And then reaching out, don't forget those people who can help you, those key district supports. When I was a superintendent, I relied a lot on First Steps to help me with parenting programs and helping parents get up to speed. Do your Head Start teachers, are they participating in professional learning? How is mental health, or is that a resource that you can lean on, especially as we come out of the pandemic? So just some examples of how you may look at and questions you might ask about what's available in your community. This will link you to that roadmap. A lot of it's based on literacy, but you can easily, those same questions you can apply to different subject areas. So you might want to look at that and look at that with your administrative team as you really take the time now to December to look at the plan that you need to have in place. Don't forget the resources that we have in that instruction hub. Lee DeAndrea will help you with that. There are purchase materials that we've put in there. You will see in the next couple of weeks lesson plans and ELA, math, social studies, science will follow, and I really want K-2, K-3 teachers look at some of the lessons that we've put in there for ELA and math. Those are some excellent lessons that you can just lift out, use as you will, edit. Great resources that are there. If you want to show a teacher what does a good lesson plan, good core instruction look like, that's a place you're going to be able to look. Math interventions, we knew that we were behind in math, and so everybody has access to Dreambox Learning. Those districts who are, for grades K-5, who are implementing with fidelity, they're getting some good results. 15 minutes a day, some do it in school, some assign it after school, and some kids are even asking when there's downtime, can I do Dreambox? So great interventions that meet the student where he is, and it puts him in the trajectory that the path that he follows, not based on did he get the answer correct or not, but how did he answer it. And so it puts him in the interventions and the lessons that he needs the greatest help in. And then of course, Math Nation used to be Algebra Nation. It's a great tool that teachers can use to help build schema before a lesson, help provide interventions or support after the lesson to follow up with, so that when they come back to class, they've built some level of schema and working knowledge and can move forward. Some great resources there. Here's my contact information. I will be glad to help you. So with that, I'm going to stop because I know you're anxious to do something different today than listen to me. You have my email. Any help that you need with your academic recovery plan, we're glad to help. We're glad to reach out if you reach out to us and provide you whatever assistance that you need. So Jennifer, I'll turn it back over to you. And unless there are any questions, just reach out and we'll be glad to provide help.
All right, thank you, Dr. Mathis. I don't believe I saw any questions in the chat. But that was very informative. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. As far as the conference, that is the end of day 1. As a reminder, we have the feedback forms. One for today. I know a couple people have already started filling those out. If you could, please just respond to that, turn that in. I know our presenters would love that feedback. You can also look at our conference website. The registration is still open for tomorrow, so if you know anyone who is not registered and wants to be, they still have the opportunity to do so. And if you have any questions that you did not get to ask in the chat, like we've been saying, please feel free to email us at scesser@ed.sc.gov, and we would be happy to answer any of those questions. We will be starting tomorrow morning at 8:30 again. We have a few more speakers. The slides will be posted as soon as we can possibly get them there. We do need to make sure that they are accessible to put online. I have them, but some have been updated since, and so those need to be approved before we can put them online. So as soon as we can get them, I will be happy to send it out for you. And I will send out an email letting people know when it's available. But otherwise, we will start bright and early at 8:30 tomorrow morning. We will discuss a few more things, Esser. Thank you. Also, I've noticed quite a few self-assessments have been turned in since this morning. So we'll be excited to go through those. But I hope to see you all tomorrow. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us. Thank you.